Hey everybody, today we are going to continue talking about solving equations, and this time we're going to solve equations that are proportions. And all that really means is that on both sides of these equations, or even on one side, we are going to have fractions. No need to be scared. You can do this. So here I have some proportions. Proportions really are two fractions that are equal to each other. So you can see we have a fraction on both sides. And of course, we're always going to look for the things that we looked for in the last lesson. We're going to look to see if we have distributing to do, like terms to put together, and if we don't, then we can go ahead and start solving. Well, we don't have any of that today, so we're just going to go ahead and start solving. And so the way we do that is by cross multiplying. The only time we can cross multiply is when we have an equal sign. It's really important that that's the only time you ever do this, is when there's an equal sign. And so what I'm going to do to cross multiply is I'm going to take the top of one side of the fraction and multiply it by the bottom of the other. So here I'm going to do 3 times n, and then I bring down my equal sign. I'm going to multiply the top of this fraction by the bottom of the other one, 4 times 2. I'll show that by using parentheses. And then I can continue solving this equation. So I have 3 times n, I can't do anything with that, and 4 times 2 is 8. And in order to get rid of this 3, I'm going to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, so I'm left with 1n. I just don't write the 1. And then 8 divided by 3 is going to give us a decimal, and so I'm just going to leave it as 8 divided by 3. That's okay. It looks funny, but it's the right answer. So anytime I see a proportion, I can just multiply the top of one by the bottom of the other. I like to multiply the thing with the letter first, with the variable first, because we're used to seeing variables on the left side. So I just like to make myself more comfortable by putting them on the left. So I have 6 times x. And then I'm going to multiply 3 times 3. And you can show that step like I did right here. But if you know that 3 times 3 is 9, you can just write it as 9. To get rid of this 6, we're going to divide both sides by 6. That gives us 1. We don't write it. We just write x. And then 9 divided by 6 is going to give us a decimal. Again, we can leave it as 9 divided by 6, which we should simplify. And I'll show you how to do that on Desmos. So if I want to do 9 divided by 6, I can literally do that in Desmos, and you can see it's 1.5. 1.5 is an excellent answer. We can say 1.5. If we want to leave it as a fraction, what we can do is we can press this fraction button up here. And I'm going to have to move my pen. And it will change that into a fraction that is simplified. So our answer could be 1.5, or it could be 3 over 2. Both answers are acceptable. What we don't want to do is leave it as 9 over 6, because we have to get comfortable with simplifying fractions. That's the right thing to do. And then even if we have a problem that looks slightly more complicated because there is a little more going on, we do the same thing. I'm going to multiply here 5 times n plus 4. Just like I did over here. To show multiplication, I can use parentheses. So I'm going to do 5 and then in parentheses n plus 4. And then I have 4 times 6. And we can just say that that is 24. And so hopefully you recognize here, and if you don't, I'm going to tell you right now that we need to do the distributive property. So I need to actually multiply 5 by both of these things. So 5 times n is 5n, and 5 times positive 4 is 20. And so now I can start doing my solving. I want to move this 20 over here. When I switch the side of the equal sign, I'm going to switch its sign, so I have a positive 24 because it stayed where it was, and now I have minus 20. 24 minus 4, or minus 20 is 4. And now I can divide both sides by 5 and get 1n. And I'm just going to leave that as 4 over 5. You could go to your calculator. It's always a good idea. And I can do 4 divided by 5. And you can write your answer as 0.8. That is a totally acceptable answer. What we don't want to do is end up having to round here, because that's how we get we make mistakes. So both of those answers are acceptable. So let me just show you one more case, and in this case it doesn't look like we have two fractions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them into fractions. We can make any number of fractions simply by dividing it by 1. So if I want to make 5 a fraction so that I can use the same steps that I just did on the last page for the last 3 problems, I'm just going to divide 5 by 1. And so now I have 1 times m plus 6. Well, anything times 1 is just going to stay the same, so that's going to be m plus 6. And then I have 2 times 5, which is 10. And so now I can take this positive 6 and move it over here, and it switches its sign, and I get m to be 4. So this problem looked different, but I'm treating it the same. Here I have 9. I want to make it a fraction, so I'm going to divide it by 1. And so I can do 1 times x minus 10. 1 times anything keeps that thing the same. And then I have 9 times 9. I'm going to move my minus 10 over here because 81 doesn't have an x, 10 doesn't have an x. When I switch the side of the equal sign, that 10 becomes positive. And so I get x to be 91. So if we practice the process correctly on the ones that look a little bit easier, like the first two, once we start adding things like n plus 4, or we make it look different where there's only one fraction, if we follow the same steps, if we repeat the good process, then we can still get ourselves to an answer. Make sure if you have questions that you ask, and make sure you watch all the way to the end and you answer the questions at the end of this video. If you need help, ask. Good luck.